One of the big bits of misinformation or lies about the Nintendo Switch 2 around the time of launch was that nobody was buying third-party games at all. And it's something that I kind of wanted to look at a little bit more and analyze, because this article, I think from the Game Business with Christopher Dring, came out like a week or so after the Nintendo Switch 2. So somehow there was an audit on Nintendo Switch 2 third-party sales, not even a month into the system's launch, as people are still picking up the system, bringing over their library, doing different types of things like that. But this article took a life of its own. You had multiple YouTubers, content creators, you had Twitter peeps, you had other journalists all talking about this as if it was a fact that the Nintendo Switch 2 is just not selling any third-party games and it's terrible and it's going to be, I don't know, just like the N64 or something like that, or just like it was before in the past when it comes to third-party sales struggling on the Nintendo Switch 2, despite the system not even being a few weeks to a month old at that point. Now, I did let it simmer just a bit, but I did dissect it, and if you went through and looked at it like with a fine-tooth comb, you can see that there wasn't really much to it, as the Nintendo Switch 2 just came out. Matt Piscatella from Circana, who has access to numbers, was saying it's way too early to evaluate. And he pretty much said that it was better than what we saw with the Nintendo Switch 1 or right on par, or whatever the case is. He pretty much came out and said, don't know about that one. And then as we actually got more games coming out and actually saw the different eShop rankings, we saw the Circana come out, or NPD as it was back before, the US sales, we saw Famitsu sales, and as we saw more games kind of come through, we saw that that was pretty much false, and it was just way too early to be making proclamations and saying nothing's doing well, because like a 2-week audit is just crazy. I've never actually seen that for any system that launches. Like, there's been no systems that I remember 2 weeks in, they're already talking about things aren't selling and all that, as people are still trying to get the system. There's sellouts, there's all sorts of issues that arise when a system just launches. But of course, in this era, when it comes to Nintendo Switch 2, misinformation and stuff when it comes to clickbait was very high last year and even a little bit this year, but it's definitely cooled down. But now we actually have some definitive information on this, and I want to break it down how that article was incorrect, because now Cyberpunk 2077, CD Projekt Red, giving us a lot more info. But before we continue on, we are giving away a Nintendo Switch 2. All you have to do to enter is hit that subscribe button if you aren't already subscribed, and drop a comment below. We are giving away a Nintendo Switch 2 once we hit 150,000 subscribers, and it will be random. So the more that you actually comment and interact, the better chance that you have to win. Hit that like button, click that notification bell, and let's go ahead and jump right back into it. Shout outs to Go Nintendo for the beat on this one, and they said this with CD Projekt Red with the breakdown. CD Projekt Red published its full year financial results for 2025 recently, and as we already covered, Cyberpunk 2077 was the main revenue driver, growing 12% over the previous year. According to that data, the Switch 2 release significantly boosted the company's sales in the goods and materials segment, which saw a 5-fold year-on-year increase thanks to game card sales. This helped net profit rise 33.7% to 594 million PLN. That's about $161.4 million, up from 444.2 million PLN, about 120.2 million in 2024. Now we got a bit more of a deeper dive here into what's happening with CD Projekt Red, and they revealed more details on the sales of Cyberpunk 2077 along with The Witcher 3, which is still going along after all of this time, a decade plus now at this point, bringing in more cash for CD Projekt Red. Now, in particular, we did learn the breakdown of sales percentages between different platforms, Cyberpunk 2077 and The Witcher 3, and the results here are kind of surprising people just a bit, as CD Projekt Red actually stated that the Nintendo Switch 2 was a big driver for their revenue. So here's the breakdown for 2025 between all the different platforms. For Cyberpunk 2077, still the PC is the beast of a system, 51% of the sales. Coming in at number 2 is PlayStation with 29%, and coming in at number 3, slightly above the Xbox platform, is the Nintendo Switch 2 at 10% compared to Xbox's 9%. Now, why this is interesting is because the Xbox has a much bigger install base as of 2025. They had a much bigger install base than the Nintendo Switch 2. So to see that people were actually buying it more in comparison, considering that the Xbox does, once again, has it established, it's got a pretty good quality version of the game, I think that's where people were a bit surprised when it comes to the breakdown of the sales here. Now, you also have to factor in that CD Projekt Red, they've already been selling it on Xbox, and it already did millions of units on there. So, of course, with the lower install base compared to PC and compared to PlayStation, you're not going to get sales as good. It was just surprising to see that the Nintendo Switch 2 was that high for 2025. Now, if you move over to The Witcher 3, same thing here. PC majority with 43%, although it's a closer split here, actually a lot closer with PlayStation with 38%. And once again, the Nintendo Switch 2, or Nintendo Switch 1 more like it, because there is no native Switch 2 version of The Witcher 3, it's just backwards compatible. And now with the boost mode on the Nintendo Switch 2, you can play that Switch 1 game for The Witcher 3 in much better handheld resolution, and of course stabilize that 30 FPS with probably no dips anymore. But Xbox was underneath that at 8% compared to the 11% there. So very interesting to see that Nintendo fans are picking up CD Projekt Red's games, and once again debunks the whole nobody's buying third-party games on the Nintendo Switch 2 platform. And also, if you just look at like the Japanese games, for example, we saw a multitude of different Japanese games come out and actually do decently. When it comes to Circana, we saw what happened with Dragon Quest. With the Famitsu sales, we actually got physical sales numbers with that. And of course, sales position charts, we're seeing a variety of different third-party games come up into the top of the charts and kind of go in and out depending on sales and different things. And of course, if you're just looking at the different sales trackers and numbers that are out there, you're seeing Switch 2 third-party games like Resident Evil Requiem do well too, on top of like the whole generation pack that seemingly did pretty good on the Nintendo Switch 2. So it's one of those things that was a bit too early. I thought it was unfounded, and really it was probably just like one developer or so complaining, and of course a couple lower sales just because the system just launched. But that doesn't mean that nobody was buying anything, because it was once again like the first couple weeks of the system's launch. People are still picking it up, they're still getting their system transferred over, they're seeing what games they're going to be picking up and buying, and they're kind of looking at it from there. And it seems like things have gotten progressively better as time has went on and sales and discounts are kind of filtering in. I know Street Fighter 6 was another game that did pretty good for Capcom last year, all things considered. A lot of good sales on that game too. So just another thing that kind of was false when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2 around the time of the launch. So what do you guys think about CD Projekt Red here and the results for Cyberpunk 2077 surprisingly being number 3 when it comes to the platforms of total percentages for sales in 2025? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, moving on to the next topic here. This one's going to be very crazy if it happens, because we've got more rumors of Grand Theft Auto 6 potentially launching day and date, or even just launching on the Nintendo Switch 2. Shoutouts to Grand Theft Auto 6 alerts and Reese Kiwi Talks, who's a friend of the channel as well. So I'm going to read off what this summary says, then read off the actual tweet from Mr. Reese. So GTA 6 is also launching on the Nintendo Switch 2 day and date with other consoles, according to a source close to Rockstar Games. If it's actually true, the official announcement is expected by early May. So that's in about a month, couple odd weeks or so. So let's go ahead and read off what Mr. Reese Kiwi Talks Riley had to say on Twitter. So he says, flights to India are now booked for June. His wife is Indian, for those who don't know, and he said that publicly. So there you go. Shout outs to Mr. Reese and his wife. Everything looks set for me to win my lavish dinner with my Rockstar source regarding GTA 6 for Switch 2. My source, who has gotten various things right, has been saying for months that GTA 6 will arrive day and date for Switch 2, which I thought was utter crap, and called him out, and he proceeded to double down. So we now have this bet going. Rockstar has until early May to announce the Switch 2 version, otherwise I win. I will be sure to post photos of the dinner, LOL. So it's interesting. It almost seems like he's trying to say no, he doesn't believe it, but this article kind of put out that, okay, well, maybe it is going to happen because he's right about multiple things. So they're kind of saying two different things, but at the same time, they're both thinking that Rockstar is probably going to put this on the Nintendo Switch 2 with GTA 6. And if you look at the current dynamics, I don't know if that's going to happen. You have to look at, obviously this game has been in development for a very long time. If they were going to put it on the Nintendo Switch 2, you have to look at the dev kits and the amount of time that they actually had to do it, because this game has already been delayed multiple times for the platforms that have been out for multiple years now at this point. So if you're looking at everything, it's hard to kind of believe right now at this point that it's going to be a day and date launch. Now, could it launch at some point? Yes, and I would say the economics would make it say that it would probably launch on the Nintendo Switch 2. You look at right now, this game is just set for the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series. Xbox Series sales have completely tanked. They have essentially just dropped down even below the original Nintendo Switch 1 worldwide. The Switch 1 is still selling better right now at this point than the Xbox Series, despite Xbox Series getting a lot of third-party games. Third-party game sales are okay on Xbox Series from what I understand, but definitely not incredible considering the install base is just not rising. And of course, Game Pass, which does eat in to the regular boxed $70 or full priced or near full price sales. That's something that is undeniable. Low install base and Game Pass definitely harping on sales just a bit. So if you're looking at those things from Rockstar's point of view, the Nintendo Switch 2 is a platform that has multiple $70 games and high price games that do sell from Nintendo and other third-party companies. So people are a bit more accustomed to buying that type of thing. So something like GTA 6, if it was day and date, I think would do considerably well. And if they were able to do a cross save feature between PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and the Nintendo Switch 2, that would absolutely bump up sales dramatically, because now you can play the PlayStation 5 version of the game or PS5 Pro version of the game, and if you don't want to do the whole portal thing or handheld PC thing, which the game's not on a handheld PC, so you couldn't do that yet now at this point, but if you don't want to do the whole Logitech G Cloud or any type of streaming type of thing like with the ROG Ally or whatever the case with Xbox is, you can have that on a dedicated platform with the Nintendo Switch 2 and easily just have a cross save come over from your Xbox or your PlayStation 5 version of the game. I think that would dramatically increase sales and people double dipping on the game. So to me, it makes sense just because the amount of systems that are out there, it's just not enough for Rockstar. Yes, they've got the big behemoth of the PlayStation 5 with over 90 million sales and will probably reach 100 million sales at some point this year, pretty much going to reach that. So that's very good, but with GTA, you want to sell a lot more than that. You want access to a lot more customers out there. So I do think that they were going to try to get GTA 6 on the Nintendo Switch 2 if they can get it done and if it can run properly and all of that. Now, if it does come, I'm not sure how they would do it or how it would run, but I think that since they do have an Xbox Series S version that they have to do, I think adapting that and kind of trying to do your best from there and utilizing what the Nintendo Switch 2 does great with DLSS and some of the other tricks and quirks that it has with the modern architecture, I think that they could, if they tried hard enough, they can get a Nintendo Switch 2 version going, but they'd have to dedicate actual time and resources to it. It couldn't be something that they just say, okay, let's just rush out there for launch. I'd rather them take their time, and if they're going to do it, make sure that you do it right. You don't want a bad version of GTA 6 out there for the Nintendo Switch 2 with terrible resolution and bad performance. We've seen that already before with some games. Not too much, though, when it comes to Switch 2, but some stuff. So I do think that it's possible with this. So we'll see if it happens. I don't know if it will. I'm kind of like 50-50 on it, but I do think that obviously it would make business sense if Rockstar was going to do something like this, especially because we don't know when the PC version of the game is going to drop. So if you want as much sales as possible, obviously Switch 2 would be another system that you'd want to add to the repertoire, because we could be seeing upwards of 30 million units by the time that this game comes out. Considering how Pocopia is selling and whatever Nintendo has planned for the fall season, I think that Switch 2 is definitely going to hit 30 plus million for the holiday. So that would be right around what the Xbox Series systems are at. So that'd be a big boost to the sales of Grand Theft Auto. So what do you guys think when it comes to potential Grand Theft Auto 6 coming over to Nintendo Switch 2? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, and moving on to the final topic here, we are going to discuss what is happening with Bloodstained, the Scarlet engagement, and shout outs to friend of the channel and great content creator DocTrey81. He talked about this a bit ago, actually about a month ago or so, but now people are picking up on it when it comes to the LinkedIn profile. Obviously, like to give him a little bit of room for his videos to do well and everything, but I highly recommend you guys checking out DocTrey81's channel. He does a great job of sniffing out different Switch 2 versions of games and titles that are coming over before anybody else does, and this was one of the games that he did that with. But it does seem, at the bare minimum at least, according to a LinkedIn profile, Bloodstained, the Scarlet engagement, is coming over to the Nintendo Switch 1 and possibly even the Nintendo Switch 2, because, I don't know, this game might be a little bit crusty on the Nintendo Switch 1. We saw how Bloodstained Ritual of the Night launched on that system. It was a mess. I was a Kickstarter backer for that. I got my version on Switch 1 and I was like, goodness gracious, I'll never support Kickstarter again after this. It was so funny, man. I was so hyped for the game too. But this one looks like it's going to be a big bump in quality. I do think that a Nintendo Switch 2 version is probably more in line here than a Switch 1 version, but we'll see what happens with that. But if they did do it, which I do think that it's probably like a 90% chance or higher that Bloodstained, the Scarlet engagement is coming to Nintendo Switch 2, I think it'd be a great fit for the game. And I think that there's probably going to be a Nintendo Direct coming up here where we're going to get some of the second tier or second half third-party games that are going to be coming to the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, we talked about Grand Theft Auto 6. Imagine the type of announcement if Grand Theft Auto 6 gets announced at a Nintendo Direct upcoming here. I think that would completely shut down the internet. I think that would be such a big announcement. Although Rockstar's not a company to make those type of announcements at Nintendo Directs or anything like that. But we have had GTA Trilogy. We did get that on the Nintendo Switch 1. And if you go back to the last GTA game that got an announcement on a Nintendo platform, that was at an E3, GTA Chinatown Wars for the Nintendo DS. So it has happened at a Nintendo event when it comes to an announcement for a GTA game. So we'll see what happens with this one. But Bloodstained, the Scarlet engagement would be a great game. It's looking like it's going to be a lot of fun. The first Bloodstained game took a while to get good when it comes to the patches and updates and all that, but it was a solid game, and this one should just build upon all of that, scratching that classic Castlevania Symphony of the Night itch that everyone still has decades later. So what do you guys think about all the different topics that we discussed here? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, peeps, that wraps it up for this one here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.